The lawyer's voice droned on like a funeral march, each word driving a knife deeper into my chest. To my beloved wife, Desiree Monroe Caldwell, I leave my entire estate, including the family home at 428 Magnolia Drive, all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and my share of Caldwell and Hayes Construction Company. I sat frozen in that cold leather chair, my hands gripping the armrests so tight my knuckles had gone pale. Across the mahogany conference table, Desiree dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, playing the grieving widow like she'd rehearsed it in front of a mirror. The diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist caught the light, one of many expensive gifts my daddy had showered on her in the 3 short years since she'd sweet-talked her way into his life. My daddy, Augustus Caldwell, gone at 91, and apparently, he'd decided his only daughter, the one who'd sat by his bedside every single day during his final months, who'd changed his sheets and made sure he took his medicine, who'd held his hand through the pain, wasn't worth a single penny. Attorney Vernon Blackwell cleared his throat and adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. To my daughter, Yvonne Caldwell, I leave my collection of fishing rods and my Bible. Fishing rods and a Bible. 68 years on this earth. 42 years taking care of my daddy after Mama passed. Running his household, managing his appointments, making sure he ate right when his diabetes got bad. And this is what I got. Hand-me-down fishing equipment and a book I already owned 3 copies of. I felt the tears building behind my eyes, hot and angry. But I wouldn't cry. Not in front of her, not in front of Desiree, who was now whispering something to her lawyer, some slick-suited man from downtown who charged more per hour than I made in a week from my little seamstress business. That's when I felt it. A gentle tap on my shoulder. I turned to see Roland Hayes, my daddy's business partner for 47 years. Roland was 83 now, his dark skin creased with age, his hair a crown of white. He'd been at our house for Sunday dinners more times than I could count. He was family, really. The only family I had left. His weathered hand passed me something under the table, a folded piece of yellow legal paper. His eyes met mine, urgent and knowing, before he looked away. My hands trembled as I unfolded it in my lap, careful to keep it below the table's edge. The words were written in Roland's shaky handwriting. The will is fake. Check the signature. My heart stopped. Then it thundered back to life, pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I looked up at Desiree. She was smiling now, not even bothering to hide it anymore. That cat that caught the canary smile. She thought she'd won. I felt my lips curve into a smile of my own. Small, controlled. The kind of smile my mama used to give when she knew something nobody else in the room knew. Attorney Blackwell was still reading. Something about personal effects and the disposition of my daddy's car, but I wasn't listening anymore. I was thinking, remembering. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Let me take you back 6 months so you understand how we got here. My daddy was a proud man, built Caldwell and Hayes Construction from nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox back in 1957. Him and Roland started out doing handyman work, and by the time I was in high school, they were building entire neighborhoods. Black-owned business in a time when banks wouldn't even look at you if you had the wrong color skin. But Daddy had grit, and he had Roland, and together they made something that lasted. After Mama died in 2017, Daddy went into himself. Stopped going to church, stopped seeing friends. The house on Magnolia Drive, the one he'd built with his own hands for Mama back in 1965, became his cave. I'd come by every day, bring him meals, try to get him to sit on the porch, breathe some fresh air. But grief had him in its grip. Then, 3 years ago, Desiree appeared. I met her at the grocery store first. She was in the produce section, and she struck up a conversation with Daddy while I was comparing prices on sweet potatoes. She was 53 then, with processed hair styled to perfection, nails done, wearing clothes that cost more than my car payment. She laughed at everything Daddy said, touched his arm, called him handsome. "Now that's a woman who knows how to make a man feel alive," Daddy said on the drive home. Something in my stomach twisted. "Daddy, you don't even know her." "I know she's got a pretty smile and kind eyes. That's enough for now." It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But I couldn't say that. Couldn't tell him that I saw something calculating in those kind eyes, something that reminded me of a hawk circling prey. Within 3 weeks, she was at our house every Sunday after church, except she never actually went to church with us. She'd show up right when the pot roast was ready, wearing something tight and telling Daddy how strong he looked for his age. Within 3 months, they were dating. Within 6 months, she'd moved into Magnolia Drive. I tried to talk to him. Lord knows I tried. "Daddy, don't you think this is moving fast? You barely know this woman." We were sitting on his back porch, the one that overlooked the garden Mama had planted. It was July, and the magnolias were blooming, filling the air with their heavy sweetness. "Yvonne, baby, I know you're worried, but I'm 87 years old. I don't have time to take things slow. Desiree makes me feel young again, makes me feel like living. But what do we really know about her? Where's she from? What did she do before?" "She's from Birmingham, worked in hotel management. Her husband passed 5 years ago." He reached over and patted my hand. "She's lonely, just like me. We found each other. That's a blessing." "Have you verified any of that?" His face hardened. It was the first time I'd seen him look at me that way. "You think I'm some kind of fool? Too old to know when a woman's genuine?" "No, Daddy, I don't want to hear it, Yvonne. For once in my life, I'm choosing happiness. You should be happy for me." But I couldn't be. Because every Sunday dinner became a performance. Desiree serving Daddy his plate, cutting his food when he didn't need help, speaking to him in that sugar-sweet voice like he was a child. And always, always, there were hints about money. "Gus, honey, the roof on the west side is looking shabby. When are you going to get that fixed?" "Gus, baby, I saw the most beautiful ring at Wilson's Jewelers downtown. Made me think of you." "Gus, sweetheart, my daughter's having trouble with her rent. I hate to ask, but could you?" And Daddy would pull out his checkbook. Every single time. I watched his savings account, the one I'd been helping him manage, dwindle. 5,000 here, 10,000 there, a $20,000 loan that would never be repaid. "Daddy, please, you need this money for your care. What if you need a home health nurse? What if—" "Desiree takes care of me just fine, better than any nurse." That's when she suggested marriage. I found out about the wedding after it happened. City Hall, no guests, just Desiree and Daddy and a clerk. When Daddy told me, he had the decency to look ashamed. "We wanted something simple," he said. Simple. Right. Simple and legal. Now she had rights to everything. I tried to talk to Roland. He'd known Daddy longer than anyone. "Roland, something's not right. She's after his money. I know it." We were at the construction company office, surrounded by blueprints and the smell of sawdust. Roland listened, his old eyes sad. "Gus is grown, Yvonne. He's made his choice. But you see it too, don't you? The way she's changing him. He barely talks to his friends anymore. She's isolated him." "I see it." Roland sighed, rubbing his weathered face. "But your daddy's proud. If we push too hard, we'll push him away completely. We have to be patient, wait for him to see it himself." But Daddy never saw it. Or maybe he did, and chose not to look too close. Because Desiree kept him in a bubble, his pills, his meals, his entire world filtered through her. She hired a new cleaning lady and fired the one who'd been with us for 20 years. She changed the locks on the house and forgot to give me a new key. She screened his phone calls. When I'd show up to visit, she'd meet me at the door with that false smile. "Oh, Yvonne, Gus is resting right now. Maybe come back tomorrow." "I'll wait," He really needs his rest. Doctor's orders. I'd like to hear that from him. Her smile would tighten. Of course. But you know how he gets when he's tired. Confused. Agitated. The doctor says we need to keep his stress levels down. Your visits seem to upset him lately. Lies. All lies. But what could I do? The few times I did get past her, Daddy seemed tired, distracted. He'd hold my hand but barely respond to my questions. Was she drugging him? I couldn't prove it. Then, 6 months ago, Daddy had his first stroke. I got the call from the hospital. Not from Desiree. She didn't bother to tell me. I heard it from Roland, who'd heard it from the ER nurse who attended church with his sister. I rushed to County General, my heart in my throat. Found Daddy in ICU, tubes and wires everywhere. And Desiree sitting beside him, holding his hand, looking up at me with those cold eyes. He's stable, she said. No hello. No apology for not calling me. The doctors say he'll recover, but it'll be slow. I should have been called. I've been here for 6 hours, Yvonne. It's been chaos. I'm doing the best I can. Chaos. Right. But she'd had time to call her own daughter, who I'd never met, and her lawyer. I saw them in the waiting room. Over the next weeks, Daddy improved. Got his speech back, most of his mobility. But something was different. He looked at me sometimes like he was trying to remember something important, but couldn't quite grasp it. Daddy, it's me, Yvonne. I know who you are, baby girl. But his voice was uncertain. Desiree was always there, always hovering. The nurses loved her. Such a devoted wife, they'd say. If only they knew. 3 months ago, Daddy had his second stroke. This one was worse. It took most of his speech, left him weak. The doctors said he had maybe weeks, maybe months. No one could say for sure. I moved into the house, didn't ask Desiree's permission, just showed up with my suitcase. This is inappropriate, she said, blocking the doorway. This is my father. I'm staying. We stared at each other. Finally, she stepped aside. Those final months, I took care of him, changed him when he couldn't make it to the bathroom, spooned soup into his mouth, read to him from the Bible, Psalms, his favorite. Sometimes his eyes would clear, and he'd squeeze my hand, and I knew he recognized me. Desiree played her part, but I noticed things. She'd forget his medications. Accidentally, give him the wrong dosage. Leave him in soiled sheets just a little too long before calling me to change them. You're doing this on purpose, I said one night after I'd found him crying, his dinner tray on the floor, food everywhere. I don't know what you're talking about. I stepped out for 10 minutes. He must have knocked it over. You left him alone for 2 hours. I checked the camera. Her face went still. What camera? The one I installed in his room, for safety. We both knew it wasn't true. But I saw fear flicker across her face before she controlled it. Good. Let her worry. 2 weeks ago, Daddy passed. Quiet, in his sleep. I was holding his hand. Desiree was downstairs on the phone with someone, laughing. The funeral was at Mount Zion Baptist, the church my parents had attended for 50 years. Pastor Williams did the service, and the choir sang Blessed Assurance, which was Mama's favorite. The whole congregation came, people Daddy had employed, families who lived in homes he'd built, Roland and all the old construction crew. Desiree sat in the front row in a black designer dress, crying into her handkerchief. People whispered about what a devoted wife she'd been. I sat next to her, dry-eyed, holding Daddy's Bible, the real one, with his notes in the margins, not whatever she'd claimed he left me. Roland gave the eulogy, talked about Daddy's integrity, his faith, his love for his family. When he said family, he looked at me, not Desiree. After the burial, after the repast at the church where I barely touched the fried chicken and mac and cheese that the church ladies had prepared, Desiree approached me. The lawyer wants to read the will on Friday, 2 o'clock at his office downtown. Fine. Gus provided for both of us, I'm sure. But her smile said something different. Her smile said, "You're about to get nothing, and I'm about to get everything." And now here I was, sitting in Attorney Vernon Blackwell's office, with its leather chairs and law books and the smell of old money, holding Roland's note in my trembling hands. The will is fake. Check the signature. Attorney Blackwell finished reading. That concludes the last will and testament of Augustus Caldwell, executed and notarized on March 15th of this year. Are there any questions? Desiree started to stand, already reaching for her purse. I think everything is clear, Vernon. Thank you for... Actually, I said, my voice cutting through the room like Mama's good kitchen knife through Sunday butter. I have a question. Everyone turned to look at me. I stood up slowly, still holding Roland's note, letting my smile grow just a little wider. Before we conclude, I'd like to request a comparison between that signature and my father's signature on this. I reached into my purse and pulled out a document I'd been carrying with me every day since Daddy passed. His original will, the one he'd made me executor of 15 years ago, the one he'd shown me and made me promise to keep safe. His original will, which I have right here. The color drained from Desiree's face. Attorney Blackwell's eyes widened. Mrs. Caldwell, This is highly irregular. Irregular? I placed both documents on his desk. What's irregular is my father supposedly signing a new will in March, when he could barely hold a pen after his second stroke in February. What's irregular is him leaving everything to a woman he'd known for 3 years, instead of the daughter who cared for him for 68. What's irregular, Mr. Blackwell, is that signature right there. I pointed to the will he'd just read from. Because that's not my father's signature. Desiree's lawyer stood up. This is an ambush. We won't stand for... Sit down, Roland's voice boomed from behind me, stronger than I'd heard it in years. Let's see what the handwriting expert has to say. Because I sure would like to know myself. Attorney Blackwell picked up both documents, holding them up to the light. His face went pale, then gray. Then he reached for his phone. Desiree grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I wouldn't do that if I were you, I said softly. The police are already on their way. You see, I called them this morning, and I brought copies of Daddy's medical records showing he physically couldn't have signed anything in March. And I brought the security footage from the house showing you practicing his signature at the kitchen table late at night. And I brought bank statements showing you transferring money out of his accounts without authorization. And I brought... She ran. But she didn't get far, because standing outside Attorney Blackwell's office, waiting in the hallway, were 2 police officers and a detective I'd spent the last 3 weeks talking to, building my case, piece by piece. Sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways, and sometimes he works through an old man's handwritten note and a daughter who loved her father enough to fight. The last thing I saw before the door closed was Desiree in handcuffs, screaming about her rights, while Roland put his weathered hand on my shoulder and squeezed. Your daddy would be proud, he whispered. I finally let the tears fall. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and old paper. I sat in a hard plastic chair in Detective Loretta Franklin's office, watching her sort through the evidence I'd brought. She was a black woman in her mid-40s, with kind eyes and no-nonsense braids pulled back in a tight bun. Mrs. Caldwell, I have to say, this is one of the most thorough evidence packages I've seen from a civilian. She looked up at me over her reading glasses. You've been planning this for a while. 3 months, I said, ever since I noticed the practice signatures. It had been late one night, about a month before Daddy passed. I'd come downstairs to get him some water and found Desiree at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. She'd scrambled to hide them when she heard me, but not before I saw what she was doing, copying Daddy's signature over and over, getting the shaky quality just right. the way his hand trembled from the stroke. I didn't confront her. Instead, I went back upstairs, checked that Daddy was sleeping, and then I did something I'd never done before. I installed a hidden camera in the kitchen, then one in the hallway, then one in Daddy's room, pointed at the door. "That's when you started documenting everything," Detective Franklin said. "Yes, ma'am. Every suspicious phone call, every time she prevented me from seeing him, every forged signature on a check, every time money disappeared from his accounts." I pulled out another folder from my bag, and I started talking to other people who knew things about Desiree Monroe. That had been the hard part, tracking down her past, but I had time during those long nights sitting with Daddy, and I had determination. Turns out Desiree Monroe wasn't even her real name. She was born Desiree Washington in Mobile, Alabama. And she had a history. 3 previous husbands, Detective Franklin read from the file I'd compiled. Clarence Washington, deceased 2008, left her his house and savings. Jerome Pritchard, deceased 2014, left her his business and life insurance. And Donald Monroe, deceased 2019, left her everything including a substantial investment portfolio. "All elderly men," I said. "All dead within 3 years of marrying her. All from natural causes that were never investigated." Detective Franklin's jaw tightened. "And you found this how?" "Church ladies?" I allowed myself a small smile. I put out some feelers at different churches around Birmingham, asked if anyone knew a woman fitting her description. Took 2 weeks. But I found 3 congregations she'd been part of. 3 different names, but same face, same story. She'd target widowers, wealthy ones, be real sweet and attentive, marry them quick, and then they'd be dead before you could blink. By the time anyone got suspicious, she'd moved on to the next city. Why didn't anyone report this? They did, in Mobile, but there was never enough evidence. The deaths looked natural. Heart attacks, strokes, complications from diabetes. These were old men with health problems. Who's going to question it? I leaned forward. But I talked to the families. They all said the same things I noticed. Medication mix-ups, forgotten doses, strange falls, the wives being the only witnesses. And then the wills, always changed right before death, always leaving everything to her. Detective Franklin was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Caldwell, do you understand what you're saying? You're suggesting this woman is a serial killer. I'm saying my father was healthy for 87 years old before she came into his life. I'm saying he had 1 stroke after she married him, then another 3 months later, then he was dead 3 months after that. I'm saying I found crushed pills in the sugar bowl, pills that would interact badly with his heart medication. I'm saying she knew exactly what she was doing." The detective looked at the evidence spread across her desk. Bank statements, medical records, security footage, testimony from 3 other families, a pattern spanning 12 years and 4 dead husbands. "I'm going to need to bring in some people from the DA's office," she said finally. "This is bigger than forgery and fraud." That was 3 days ago. Now I was sitting in Attorney Blackwell's office again, this time with my own lawyer, Patricia Chen, recommended by Roland. She was sharp as a tack and didn't miss a thing. "The good news," Patricia said, "is that Desiree's will is obviously invalid. We're having it forensically analyzed, but it's clear your father's signature was forged. The original will from 2008 stands, which makes you the primary beneficiary and executor of his estate." I felt something loosen in my chest. "So the house is yours. The business shares are yours. The accounts are yours, all of it." Patricia smiled. "Well, mostly yours. Your father did leave some specific bequests to Roland Hayes and a few charitable donations to Mount Zion Baptist, but the bulk of the estate comes to you." "What about the money she stole?" Patricia's smile faded. "That's complicated. She transferred approximately $240,000 out of your father's accounts over the 3 years they were together, Some of it was spent, jewelry, clothes, her daughter's expenses. Some of it was moved to offshore accounts we're still trying to trace. You can file a civil suit to recover what's left, but it'll take time. $240,000. I thought about Daddy, working his whole life, building something from nothing, and this woman had just taken it. Like he was nothing but a piggy bank to be smashed open. "There's something else," Patricia said, glancing at her notes. "The DA is building a case for elder abuse, fraud, and they're looking into possible homicide charges. They're exhuming the bodies of her previous husbands." My stomach turned. Lord have mercy. If they find evidence of foul play, this becomes a capital case. She could be looking at life in prison, possibly death penalty. I should have felt satisfaction at that. Instead, I just felt tired. Bone-deep tired. That Sunday, I went to Mount Zion for the first time since the funeral. Walked through those familiar doors, smelled the old wood and lemon polish, heard the choir warming up. People stopped me in the aisle, hugged me, told me they'd been praying. Sister Geneva, who'd known my mama since they were girls, held my hands and looked into my eyes. "How you holding up, baby?" "I'm here," I said, which was the only honest answer I had. Pastor Williams pulled me aside after service. He was 72, had been at Mount Zion for 30 years and had baptized me, married me to my late husband Jerome, and buried both Jerome and Daddy. "Yvonne, I heard about what happened with Desiree. The whole church is talking about it." I figured they would be. "People are saying you're some kind of hero, catching her like that, bringing her to justice." I shook my head. "I'm not a hero, Pastor. I'm just a daughter who knew something was wrong and couldn't let it go." "That's exactly what a hero is." He squeezed my shoulder. "Your daddy, he came to see me about 6 months before his first stroke. Did you know that?" My heart skipped. "No. What did he say?" "He wanted to talk about his will. Said he was thinking about changing it. Said Desiree had been suggesting he should provide for her properly, make sure she was taken care of." Pastor Williams' face was troubled. "I told him to think carefully. Told him not to make any big decisions when he was feeling emotional. He got defensive, said I didn't understand, that Desiree made him happy." "Did he change it then?" "No. He left my office saying he'd think about it. Next time I saw him was after the stroke and he wasn't himself anymore." Pastor Williams looked at me seriously. "Yvonne, I think your father knew. Somewhere deep down. I think he had doubts. But he was lonely, and she made him feel alive, and he didn't want to believe the worst. I thought about that all week. Daddy, suspicious but hopeful, wanting to believe in love one more time before he died. And Desiree, calculating, patient, waiting for the right moment to strike. The moment came with the strokes, with him vulnerable and confused. That's when she made her move, forged the will, probably with help from that slick lawyer of hers who'd disappeared the moment the police started asking questions. Roland came by the house on Tuesday evening. I'd moved back into Magnolia Drive, reclaiming the home Daddy built. Every room had memories, Mama in the kitchen making her famous peach cobbler, Daddy in his workshop building furniture, family Christmases with the tree in the corner and everyone gathered around. But there were also traces of Desiree everywhere. Her expensive perfume still lingered in the master bedroom. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her magazines cluttered the coffee table. "You going to keep the house?" Roland asked. We were sitting on the back porch watching the sun set over Mama's magnolia trees. "I think so. It's home. But I need to clear out her things first. Cleanse it, you know?" Roland nodded. "I can help with that. Me and some of the boys from the old crew. We'll have it done in a weekend." "Thank you, Roland." I looked at him, this man who'd been like an uncle to me my whole life. "How did you know? About the will?" He was quiet for a long moment, sipping his sweet tea. "I was there when Gus made his original will back in 2008. Watched him sign it. Knew every detail. So when that lawyer started reading off this new one, saying things I knew Gus would never agree to, I looked at the signature. He pulled out his own copy of the original will. See this? The way Gus made his C in Caldwell? It swooped back, like this. Old habit from when he learned cursive back in the 40s. Every signature, his whole life, that swoop. He pulled out a photo of the forged will he'd taken with his phone. This one? No swoop. Close, but not right. And the tremor was too regular, too practiced. Gus's shake was random, unpredictable. This looked like someone trying to copy a shake. You noticed all that in the few seconds he was reading? I noticed it the moment he started. Been studying Gus's signature for 47 years. Every contract, every deal, every check. I knew. Roland's eyes were fierce. And I knew if I didn't do something right then, she'd walk out of there with everything Gus built. Everything he wanted you to have. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You saved me. We saved each other. You did the hard work, the investigating, the evidence gathering. I just pointed you in the right direction. He smiled. Besides, Gus would haunt me if I let that woman get away with it. The following Monday, I had to go to the construction company office. Caldwell and Hayes Construction was still running, managed by Roland and a younger generation of project managers. But as Daddy's heir, I now owned 50% of it. The office was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits. Blueprints on every wall, the smell of coffee and sawdust, the sound of phones ringing and plans being discussed. The crew welcomed me with hugs and condolences. These were men Daddy had trained, some of them sons of men who'd worked with him from the beginning. Miss Yvonne, said Terrence Shaw, the operations manager. He was 45, third generation at the company. We're so sorry about Mr. Gus, and we heard about everything else. Thank you, Terrence. If you need anything at all, we're here. This company was your daddy's life. We want to make sure it keeps running the way he'd want. Roland pulled me into the main office. I need to show you something. He opened the company safe. I didn't even know we had a safe. And pulled out a file. About 6 weeks before Gus's second stroke, he came here, alone. He told me Desiree didn't know he was coming. Roland handed me the file. He said, Roland, if anything happens to me, I want you to give this to Yvonne. Only Yvonne. Don't trust anyone else. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were documents. Bank statements showing the money Desiree had transferred. A private investigator's report about her past. Daddy had hired someone to look into her background after she suggested changing the will. Photographs of Desiree meeting with her daughter and another man I didn't recognize. And a letter, in Daddy's shaky handwriting. My dearest Yvonne, it began, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and my worst fears have come true. I had to sit down. Roland put a hand on my shoulder as I read. I've been a fool. I let loneliness cloud my judgment, and I let Desiree into our lives without properly vetting her. By the time I realized what she was, it was too late. She had her hooks in deep. I tried to get her to leave, but she threatened to claim I was mentally incompetent, that I was abusing her, that she'd take me to court and take everything. She said she had lawyers who specialized in elder law. Who could make me look like a demented old man who didn't know what he was doing? I realized then that she was dangerous, that she'd done this before. I hired a private investigator and learned the truth. The dead husbands, the pattern, the money. I wanted to go to the police, but I was afraid. Afraid of the scandal, afraid people would think I was senile, afraid she'd hurt you to get to me. So I made this file. Evidence for when I'm gone and she can't hurt me anymore. I'm sorry, baby girl. Sorry I didn't listen to you. Sorry I put you through this. You tried to warn me and I was too proud to hear it. The house is yours. The business is yours. Everything I built for you and for your children and grandchildren. Don't let her take that away. Fight her, Yvonne. Fight her the way your mama would have. I love you, baby girl. I always have. I'm sorry I forgot that for a while. Your daddy, Augustus Caldwell. The tears came hard and fast. Roland held me while I sobbed, all the grief and anger and relief pouring out at once. Daddy had known. He'd tried to protect me. He'd left me the tools to fight back. That evening, I called Detective Franklin and told her about the file. She came to the construction office immediately, collected everything, and added it to the growing case against Desiree. "This is good," she said. "Real good. This shows premeditation on her part, the threats, the manipulation, and it corroborates everything you've told us." "When's the trial?" "Preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. After that, could be months before trial depending on what the exhumations show." She looked at me with sympathy. "You prepared for this to be a long process?" "I've been through worse." But I hadn't, not really. Because 2 days later, Detective Franklin called me with news that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Caldwell, we need you to come down to the station. There's been a development." "What kind of development?" "Desiree made bail. Her daughter posted it, and now we can't find her." My heart stopped. "What do you mean you can't find her?" "She cut off her ankle monitor and disappeared. We have officers looking, but—" Detective Franklin's voice was grim. "Mrs. Caldwell, we think she might come after you. You were the one who exposed her, provided the evidence. If she's desperate enough to run, she might be desperate enough to try something. We're sending a patrol car to your house." I hung up and looked around Magnolia Drive. Suddenly, every shadow seemed threatening. Every creak of the old house sounded like footsteps. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You took everything from me. Now I'm going to take everything from you." And then, before I could process that, before I could even move, I heard glass breaking somewhere in the house. She was already here. I didn't scream. Mama taught me better than that. When danger comes, you think first, panic later. I grabbed my phone and ran toward the back of the house, away from the sound of breaking glass. My fingers shook as I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency?" "Someone's breaking into my house, 428 Magnolia Drive. She's already inside. I need—" Another crash, closer this time. The kitchen window. "Ma'am, officers are already en route to your location. Stay on the line with me." "Can you get to a safe place?" I was already moving, heading for Daddy's old workshop in the back. It had a heavy door with a bolt lock on the inside. Daddy had installed it years ago because he kept expensive tools in there. If I could just make it— "Yvonne!" Desiree's voice rang through the house, high and sharp. "I know you're here. Your car's outside." I slipped into the workshop and threw the bolt just as I heard her footsteps in the hallway. My heart hammered against my ribs. The 911 operator was still talking, but I could barely hear her over the blood rushing in my ears. "You ruined everything!" Desiree screamed. She was right outside the door now. The handle rattled. "I had it all. The house, the money, the business, and you took it from me with your snooping and your cameras and your evidence." I looked around the workshop. Daddy's tools were still organized on the pegboard: hammers, wrenches, saws. I grabbed a heavy wrench, not because I wanted to use it, but because I needed to feel like I had something. The pounding on the door started. "Open this door, Yvonne. We're going to talk about this like adults." "The police are on their way," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "You need to leave. Running just makes it worse." "Worse?" She laughed, wild and bitter. "How could it be worse? They're digging up my husband's. They're talking about murder charges. My life is over because of you." "Your life is over because of what you did. You killed those men. You killed my father." "I loved Augustus." The pounding stopped. Her voice dropped to something almost conversational. "I really did. He was sweet, kind, not like the others." My skin crawled. "Then why? Why forge the will? Why take everything?" "Because that's what I do, Yvonne. It's what I'm good at." I could hear her sliding down the door, sitting on the other side. "You know what it's like being a black woman alone in this world? No education, no real skills. I learned early that men had what I needed, and if I was smart and patient, I could have it too. The first one was almost an accident. Clarence really did just have a heart attack. But when I saw that insurance check, when I saw how easy it was, she trailed off. It became a business, a very profitable business. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about survival, redistribution of wealth from old men who were going to die anyway to a woman who deserved a chance at the good life. She laughed again. You wouldn't understand. You had everything handed to you, a father who loved you, a house, a business. I had to take mine. My father built that business with his own hands. He worked for everything he had. And now it's gone. Back to you, the precious daughter. Her voice turned vicious. But you know what? Even if I go to prison, even if they execute me, I already won. Because I made Augustus's last years miserable. I made him doubt you. I made him lonely and confused and scared. And you had to watch it happen. The words hit like physical blows. I pressed my back against the wall, gripping the wrench so hard my knuckles ached. That's not true. He knew. He left me a letter. He knew what you were and he was trying to protect me. Silence. Then, he left you a letter? Documented everything. Your threats, your manipulation. The private investigator he hired. It's all part of the evidence now. I heard her stand up. Then I really do have nothing to lose, do I? The pounding started again, harder this time. She was throwing her whole body against the door. The old wood groaned but held. Ma'am, what's happening? The 911 operator's voice cut through my fear. She's trying to break down the door. Officers are 2 minutes away. Stay where you are. Do not engage. But Desiree wasn't stopping. I heard something metal scraping. Was she trying to pick the lock? No, the bolt was on my side. Then I realized what she was doing. The hinges. She was trying to remove the hinges. I looked around desperately. The workshop had one small window, too high and too small for me to fit through. The walls were solid. The only way out was through that door. My phone buzzed. Roland. Yvonne, Detective Franklin called me. Are you okay? Where are you? Workshop. She's here. She's trying to get in. I'm 5 minutes away. Hold on, baby girl. Just hold on. The scraping stopped. Then I heard something that made my blood freeze. The sound of liquid splashing against the door. And then I smelled it. Gasoline. Desiree, no! I screamed. If I can't have it, nobody can. Especially not you. I heard the strike of a match. Everything happened at once. I grabbed Daddy's old fire extinguisher from the corner. He'd always kept one in the workshop, always been safety conscious. I threw back the bolt and burst through the door just as the flames started to spread. Desiree stood there with matches in her hand, her face twisted with rage and desperation. The hallway floor was soaked with gasoline, flames already licking up the walls. I aimed the extinguisher and sprayed. White foam covered the flames, covered Desiree, covered everything. She screamed and lunged at me, slipping on the wet floor. We went down together, sliding through foam and gasoline. She was stronger than she looked, her hands going for my throat. I brought the wrench up between us, pushing it against her chest, keeping her back. You should have minded your business, she shrieked, her manicured nails scratching at my face. He was mine. Everything was mine. He was my father. I shoved hard and she rolled off me. I heard sirens, shouting. The front door burst open and suddenly, there were police everywhere, pulling Desiree off me, pushing me back, checking for injuries. Detective Franklin appeared, her face pale. Mrs. Caldwell, are you hurt? I'm okay. But I wasn't. I was shaking so hard I could barely stand. They hauled Desiree away in handcuffs, still screaming. She's lying! I didn't do anything! She attacked me! Save it for your lawyer, Detective Franklin said coldly. We've got attempted murder, arson, assault. You just keep digging that hole deeper. Roland arrived as the paramedics were checking me over. He took one look at the foam-covered hallway, the scorch marks on the walls, and wrapped me in a hug so tight I couldn't breathe. "Thank the Lord," he whispered. "Thank the Lord you're safe." The fire department declared the house safe after checking everything. The damage was mostly cosmetic: scorched walls, the smell of gasoline and foam, some water damage from the extinguisher. Nothing that couldn't be fixed.
But I couldn't stay there that night. Roland took me to his house, where his wife Pauline fed me soup and put me to bed in their guest room like I was a child again. The next morning, I woke to find half of Mount Zion's congregation on Roland's front lawn. Sister Geneva was organizing a cleaning crew. Brother Marcus, who owned a construction company, was already talking about repairs. The youth group was bringing boxes and supplies. Pastor Williams found me on the porch, wrapped in one of Pauline's quilts. "The church takes care of its own," he said simply. "We're going to make your house right again, and we're going to be there at that courthouse when that woman faces justice." The preliminary hearing was 3 weeks later. I sat in the front row with Roland on one side and Patricia on the other. The courtroom was packed. People from Mount Zion, former employees of Daddy's, even some of the families of Desiree's previous victims who'd driven in from Alabama. Desiree was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her processed hair now pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked smaller somehow, less polished. When her eyes met mine, I didn't look away. The charges were read: 4 counts of first-degree murder. The exhumations had found evidence of poisoning in all her previous husbands. Attempted murder, arson, fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and theft. Her new lawyer, court-appointed after her fancy lawyer abandoned her, tried to argue for bail. "Your Honor, my client is a 60-year-old woman with no prior criminal record." "Except for the 4 murders," the prosecutor interrupted. "And she's already proven she's a flight risk by cutting off her ankle monitor and attempting to kill the primary witness." The judge, a stern black woman in her 60s named Judge Harriet Simmons, looked at Desiree over her glasses. "Bail denied. Trial is set for 8 weeks from today. Defendant will remain in custody." As they led her out, Desiree turned to look at me one last time. "I hope you're happy," she said. "I hope that house and that money keep you warm at night." "They won't," I said clearly, "but justice will." The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified about the forged will, the stolen money, Daddy's decline. Roland testified about the signature. The private investigator Daddy hired testified about what he'd found. The families of the previous husbands testified about the same patterns: the rushed marriages, the suspicious deaths, the changed wills. The medical examiner testified about the poison found in the exhumed bodies: small doses of antifreeze mixed into food and drinks over months, causing symptoms that mimicked natural illness. The same chemicals were found in Daddy's hair samples, which the coroner had saved from the autopsy. The security footage was played: Desiree practicing signatures, Desiree crushing pills, Desiree meeting with her daughter and a man who turned out to be a shady lawyer who specialized in helping people forge documents. On the final day, the jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the 4 women stood. "On the count of first-degree murder of Clarence Washington, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of first-degree murder of Jerome Pritchard, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of first-degree murder of Donald Monroe, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of first-degree murder of Augustus Caldwell, we find the defendant guilty." She continued through all the charges. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Desiree sat frozen, her face blank. When Judge Simmons asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, she finally looked up. "I regret getting caught," she said. "That's all." Judge Simmons's expression hardened. "You are a predator who targeted vulnerable people and exploited their loneliness for profit. You showed no remorse, no humanity. This court sentences you to 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 20 years for the other charges.
May God have mercy on your soul, because this court certainly won't." The courtroom erupted in applause. The judge banged her gavel, but she was smiling. As they led Desiree away, I felt something release in my chest. It was over. Really over. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. I gave a brief statement, thanking Detective Franklin, the DA's office, Roland, Pastor Williams, and everyone who'd supported me. Then I went home. Home to Magnolia Drive, which the Mount Zion crew had restored better than new. They'd repaired the fire damage, repainted the walls, deep-cleaned everything. Sister Geneva's daughter, who was an interior decorator, had helped me clear out all of Desiree's things and bring back some of Mama's old furniture from storage. The house felt like mine again, like Daddy's again. I spent that first evening sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset over Mama's magnolia trees. The white blooms glowed in the fading light, filling the air with their sweet scent. My phone rang. It was Patricia. "Yvonne, good news. We've recovered about 60% of the stolen funds from Desiree's offshore accounts. The rest was spent, but we're working with the DA to seize any assets she has left. You should see that money within 3 months." "Thank you, Patricia." "There's something else. Roland wants to talk to you about the business. He says he's ready to retire, and he wants to discuss your role going forward." I'd been thinking about that. Caldwell and Hayes Construction, Daddy's legacy, my legacy now. The next day, I met with Roland at the company office. He looked tired but peaceful. "I'm 73 years old," he said. "Time for me to spend more time with Pauline, maybe do some fishing, visit our grandkids in Atlanta." He smiled. "But I don't want to sell the company to strangers. This is Gus's life work. Yours too, even if you haven't been involved day to day." "What are you proposing?" "I'm proposing we bring in some new blood. Terrence Shaw is ready to take over operations. We hire a good business manager, and you stay on as co-owner and board chair. You don't have to be here every day, but you make the big decisions. Keep the company true to what Gus built." I thought about Daddy, working alongside Roland for 47 years, building homes for families, creating jobs, being part of the community. "Yes," I said. "Let's do it." Over the next few months, I settled into a new rhythm. 3 days a week at the construction company, learning the business, meeting with clients, reviewing plans. 2 days at my seamstress shop, which I'd kept running through everything, my own little corner of independence. Sundays at Mount Zion, singing in the choir, having dinner with church family. I started a foundation in Daddy's name, the Augustus Caldwell Community Development Fund. It provided grants for Black-owned businesses, scholarships for trade schools, and support for elderly people who needed help managing their finances and protecting themselves from exploitation. "Daddy would love this," I told Roland at the foundation's first event. We'd awarded grants to 5 small businesses and scholarships to 10 students. "He'd be so proud of you," Roland said. "Everything you've done, how you fought for him, how you're keeping his legacy alive." 6 months after the trial, I finally felt ready to go through Daddy's personal effects. The Bible he'd left me in the fake will was actually in his nightstand, his real Bible, worn and marked up with notes. I opened it to Psalms, his favorite, and found a bookmark at Psalm 37. Daddy had underlined verse 7. "Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes." And in the margin, in his shaky handwriting from before the strokes got bad, "For Yvonne, trust God. Truth wins." I sat on his bed and cried, but they were clean tears this time. Healing tears. That Sunday, Pastor Williams asked me to give testimony. I stood up in front of the congregation, looking at all the faces that had supported me through the darkest time of my life. "I want to thank you all," I said, "for the prayers, the meals, the help fixing my house, the shoulders to cry on. You showed me what it means to be family, to be community." Sister Geneva called out, "That's what we do, baby!"
When Daddy died, I thought I'd lost everything. My last parent, my sense of safety, my faith in people. But God showed me something through all this. He showed me that truth is stronger than lies, that love outlasts greed, that community can stand against evil. I looked at Roland, sitting with Pauline in their usual pew. He showed me that family isn't always blood. It's the people who stand with you when everything falls apart, who slip you a note when you need it most, who show up with cleaning supplies and casseroles and prayers. The congregation murmured, "Amen." Desiree thought she could erase my father's legacy, steal what he built, and walk away untouched. But she didn't understand that what Daddy built was bigger than money or property. He built relationships. He built trust. He built a community of people who cared about each other and looked out for each other. I held up his Bible. And he taught me to fight, to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So thank you, Mount Zion. Thank you for being the family that helped me find my way back to the light. The choir started singing, "His Eye is on the Sparrow," and I sat down, surrounded by love. A year after Daddy's death, I held a memorial service at Magnolia Drive. Not a sad affair, but a celebration. I invited everyone who'd known him, old friends, former employees, people who lived in houses he'd built, kids he'd mentored, pastors he'd supported. We set up tables in the backyard under the magnolia trees. Church ladies brought enough food to feed an army, fried chicken and collard greens and mac and cheese and cornbread and sweet potato pie. Roland told stories about Daddy's early days in construction, the jobs that went wrong, the clients who became friends. Terrence Shaw talked about how Daddy had given him a chance when nobody else would, hired him straight out of trade school, and taught him everything about the business. "Mr. Caldwell saw potential in people," Terrence said. "He invested in people. That's why this company is still standing. That's why we're all here." As the sun set and people started to leave, Roland found me standing by Mama's rose bushes, which I'd been nursing back to health. "You did good today," he said. "Gus would be proud." I'm finally starting to feel like I can breathe again, like the weight is off my shoulders. That's what justice does. It lets you move forward. Roland was quiet for a moment. "You know what the best revenge is?" "What?" "Living well. Building something good. Turning pain into purpose." He gestured at the yard full of people, the laughter, the love. This is the best revenge. She wanted to destroy your father's legacy, but look, it's stronger than ever." He was right. Daddy's legacy wasn't just the house or the business or the money. It was the people whose lives he'd touched, the community he'd built, the values he'd lived by. And now it was mine to carry forward. I thought about Desiree, sitting in prison for the rest of her life. She'd taken so much from me. My father's final years, my peace of mind, my sense of safety. But she hadn't taken what mattered most. She hadn't taken the love, the memories, the foundation Daddy had laid. As the last guests left and I stood alone in the twilight, I felt Daddy's presence, not in a spooky way, but in the solid weight of the house behind me, in the strong roots of the magnolia trees, in the knowledge that I was standing on ground he'd made firm. "I did it, Daddy," I whispered to the purple sky. "I fought for you. I fought for us. And we won." The magnolia blooms swayed in the evening breeze, and somewhere in the distance the church bells rang. I smiled, picked up the last of the dishes, and went inside my house, my home, to rest. That's all for today's story. If this touched your heart, please subscribe and share your own experiences below. We're all in this together.